Michele Granberg here. Welcome to Positive Energy, serving up nourishment for your soul. Do you believe in angels? If you do, you're not alone. Nearly 8 in 10 Americans believe in the existence of angels. What if you could communicate with your very own angel? Well, this experience has happened to my guest today. Gerry Gavin has written this book, Messages from Margaret, detailing his experiences with an angel named Margaret, and he joined us to share her message and more. So Gerry, it's a pleasure to have you.
It is a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to Positive Energy. I know we spoke briefly, sort of briefly, at the Mind Body Spirit Expo, and that's where we met back in April of this year.
Right, exactly.
It was such a delightful conversation that I said I have to have you back to deepen the conversation and to talk more. And people are very excited about angels. I read your book, so it really resonates for me, and I'm really looking forward to this.
It's exciting to be here, and any chance to spread this message, I'm really thrilled to have.
So it seems these days that people are talking about angels a lot more than ever before, that there's a growing belief more and more. It's almost mainstream. Have you found that, and what do you attribute that to? Are people just more aware of them, or are there actually more angels?
It's the same number of angels, actually, but it's an interesting thing, and it's funny you would say that, because I'm in the process of working on another book that's called If You Could Talk to an Angel, and Margaret kind of addresses that question, and one of the Hay House authors, John Holland, who's a psychic medium, actually asked that question, and what she said is that you find as a worldwide phenomenon right now through Facebook and Twitter and everything else that's happening, that there's this incredible need for people to be connected. The desire to be connected on every single level. And as that desire for connection is kind of reaching deeper and deeper down inside of us, it's bringing up a memory of our connectedness to something much more.
Okay.
You know, our connectedness to our soul. And by our connectedness to our soul, then, our connectedness to everything else involved in it as well, particularly our connectedness to angels.
So that's intensifying right now and increasing, so it's like there's a signal that's being put out to some degree, our desire, our need, and our asking for it, and our invitation is more available.
Exactly. And as we try to expand our ability to be connected with more of mankind, that's just fueling this desire to find more in our lives as well.
So can you comment a little bit about, not the history of angels, but how angels are connected through different cultures or different religions, and how we see angels? And maybe some of the misconceptions that we have generally.
I appreciate doing that, because again, this is one of the things. There are a lot of legend type things that are associated with angels, and a lot of misconceptions.
They're more stories or fables.
Right. What's so interesting is that one thing that is so consistent worldwide is that virtually every worldwide religion has some mention of angels within their history, within the history of their founding. Some even have the same angels that are representative in more than one area. If you look at the Christian Bible, you'll find that Gabriel spoke in the Christian Bible. If you look, you'll find the same thing in terms of Muhammad's conversations and the assistance in the writing of the Quran. So what Margaret speaks about is that angels have come to be the messengers of the Creator in every worldwide religion to try to carry a consistent message. And that consistent message is, you are all the same. Trying to let all of us know that, by whatever nationality that angel would come to speak to, whatever group it would be, whatever tongue or culture it was spoken in, the desire was to try to help people understand that we are one and the same and all interconnected. Unfortunately, the translation of those messages gets lost. If you go back to the core of it, though, it always comes back to the same type of a thing, which is where it's so consistent. The other thing that is kind of commonly misunderstood is about how angels come to be and what happens. And what she explains is that in the process of creation, in the very first dawn of the world, the Creator at that time, who existed as a being of light, a being of pure light and love, desire to expand that energy, desire to expand it in such a way that an experiential factor of that energy could take place. So what she explains is that the Creator took this energy of light and drew it together into such a ferocious ball of energy that what resulted was this explosive bang. And from this bang, the light separated from the dark matter, and from that bang, the first level of creation took place, which were the angels. And angels were created of the light matter, angels were created of the dark matter. And the dark matter does not mean evil, it just meant that it created this polarity of energy, this polarity of experiences. And we then were the next level of creation, us being the souls. And souls then, much kind of like the story of creation, were given the choice of staying beings of light or experiencing what was being created by angels on both sides. And that's what we do. We come into incarnations, we experience everything from a myriad of things, and in so doing, we expand our souls. So angels are not, as we sometimes might think, someone who's lived a really good life and then they go on and they get their wings and
they step up the ladder.
Right, they become an angel. It's a different energy, but the interesting part of it is that Margaret says neither the Creator or angels see themselves as being better than the creations that we are. And if anything, they are so enamored of us to come here and forget who we are and live these experiences just to try to help to grow the soul energy in the process. So they just think we're amazing for doing this.
It's amazing from our human point of view that we tend to do that with lots of things, judge and categorize and say something's better or worse and put things sort of on that scale. And so there is that sort of, you're right, across the board misbelief that angels are up here, we're down here, and somehow they're greater than, we're lesser than, but we're all equal but different in that way. So when you say light and dark, I think also like denser vibration is the way I think of it too. Is that right? Or a higher vibration? Is that correct in saying that angels are sort of higher vibration, meaning they're non-physical and never have been physical the way we understand it, and we are physical, so
absolutely. So we'll feel vibration coming from a much higher level if you're communicating with angels. How she'll describe it is that she communicates from an energy of love. So in that level of communication, you actually hear it through your heart. You don't hear it through your head. It's not filter through all of those thoughts that come up as to, is that right, is that wrong, am I getting this right, what's happening? It'll just come through as a feeling of love. When I first started channeling her, that was one of the first kind of amazing parts of it, because feeling that energy gave me the opportunity to just kind of let it flow. And I was so amazed at how the messages that came through were so non-judgmental and so loving, and yet could say things to me about myself that if anyone ever said it to me, I would have been unbelievably defensive about. But she would say things in such a loving manner, and she would say them through your heart, so you know that that's true, and you just sort of accept it, and you learn from it, which is kind of the unique thing about her messages. She speaks in this very, very down-to-earth voice. The book was called Down to Earth Angelic Advice, and I think that's something that, as to why her message has just affected so many people, and why they love to hear her speak. So.
It's so non-threatening, but even beyond that, it speaks to us, I guess, on an unconscious level, on an energetic level, and on a heart level. So I'm imagining when you teach people, which we'll talk about maybe a little bit later, how they can also make that connection with their angel, hear them, speak with them, and communicate with them. I imagine that going into their heart, connecting with their heart energy, that heart center is a big part of that.
Absolutely. That's actually one of the sections, one of the exercises in the workshop, is to release fear and grief from your heart center, because we hold on to so much of that. We function from such a high level of fear most of the time, which is clearly the opposite of love. So when we want to open up that area, some of the things that we need to do is really loosen up a lot of that energy.
Okay.
And grief being the same thing, because grief is just trying to hold on to something for the fear that if we let go of it, it's gone, you know? And so that's part of the process as well. So yeah, that's
being
definitely...
aware of that and releasing it, yeah.
Right.
So talking about fear, not that we want to dwell on that, but you know, Margaret has a lot of messages or lots to speak on that is very relevant for us, especially at this time. And the book is really full of those messages and topics, and I'm sure the new book is as well. But I believe you said that it was birthed out of her wanting to dispel fear that seemed to be at the time, a few years ago, really collecting and building in gaining in momentum. So say a little bit about, I want to talk a little bit more about Margaret's specific messages and how she addresses fear, and maybe what she says about our future, or our potential future, of course, because nothing's written in stone.
Right.
Humanities.
Sure. Well, you know, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because as you said, the very first chapter of the book, her first message is about fear, and why in 2012, when I self-published the first book, there were a lot of other things in that book that just had to do with the whole 2012 thing, because right then people were afraid it was the end of the world.
Everybody was talking
Everyone
about
was
it.
thinking that it's the end of the Mayan calendar, the world is going to end, and she was trying to get that message out. First of all, no, it's not. Just please stop thinking this way. And the second aspect of it was just that what happens to us is that we get very absorbed in fearful thoughts. And fear is also sold tremendously in the media. I mean, fear is a wonderful thing. And I'm a huge fan of the media, so I'm not saying this in a negative sense of trying to slam it, but what winds up happening is, if you say, and you're in the media, and someone gets on the microphone and they say, fuzzy, warm story about a little girl at 11, you're like, okay. You know? But if the story is, blizzard could potentially hit our area and bury us in 30 feet of snow, someone's going to tune in.
Yeah.
So what's been found is that fear is a very motivating factor.
It's sensational.
It is.
It's overstimulating.
But you know, it also actually is very scientific, because what they've found about fear really comes down to just the nature of our being. When you think about the nature of who we were, like as cave people, if we walked out of our cave one day and we found food right there in front of the cave for us, we would think, wow, that's wonderful, and take it inside and eat it, and everything would be great. But that wouldn't be recorded in our brain as much as if we went out the next day and were chased by a dinosaur. That's going to record. So the thing we fear is what we're learning from. So we say, all right, I want to remember this so it doesn't happen again. We never say to ourselves, I want to remember this so it does happen again.
Okay.
And that's where Margaret's message starts to come in so importantly, because what she says is, the reason angels, every time they have ever appeared in the Bible and any other book, start with the words, fear not, is not because they're frightening and that people are scared of their being there. It's because that's the primary message that, if we understood, would totally change the momentum of our lives. So if we did start to record those things in our minds where that wonderful thing happens, and we say, I want to remember this, I want to remember what it felt like to just have this wonderful thing occur, and that would start to become as powerful a message as the fearful one, it really starts to change the energy. And if enough people are doing that, then you have that butterfly effect, if you will, where the momentum of thinking starts
shift
to
things on a much broader...
Right. And that's just on just a regular level of things that people can relate to. That's how trends start. I mean, when you think that enough people start to wear a certain thing or do a certain thing, all of a sudden a trend begins. And that's because our collective unconscious minds begin to do those things and to say, hey, everybody likes this. This must make them happy. And that's what we want. We want joy. We want to be happy.
So from that higher perspective, with no judgment, fear is not wrong or right. It is.
Right.
It actually has a lot of potential for us to learn from it. It's really a vehicle of heightened contrast
Absolutely.
that gets us to pay attention, and then we get to ask ourselves, is that really what I want in my life experience? And do I want to continue that?
Totally. One of the things Margaret speaks about in the book, and she talks about so much on the radio show, is a process called affirmations. And affirmations is a little different from affirmation. And affirmation is, I am prosperous, I am happy, those type of things. And those are really useful. But one of the things she says is that very often we have trouble believing that. Our brains have a hard time believing it. Because like if we're sitting in the dark and we're saying, I am prosperous, and our power was just shut off, your brain is going, yeah, right. That's not
resistance.
it. But when we think about the questions we ask ourselves, like we ask ourselves the question all the time, like, why is there more month than there's money? Why can't I find a girlfriend? Why is it that I can't lose weight? Why is it that no one likes me? Why? All these why questions. And essentially what she says is our brain works just like a computer. So it goes on a Google search that says, why can't you do this? Let me find the answer. And it will find every experience in your life that will lead you to energetically draw more of that energy to you. But if you find yourself thinking that question and you flip the question around to, why is it so easy for me to, and then fill in the blank, the reverse of that question. Why is it so easy for me to find a boyfriend? Why is it so easy for me to lose weight? Why is it so easy? Now your brain is forced to search for a different answer. And it will then try to find all the cellular memory of the successes in your life. And that will start to change your energy in the other direction. But we don't normally ask those questions. So that's part of what she's trying to...
And we don't usually think consciously about the very mechanics of our own thoughts.
Absolutely.
And how there's so much habitual energy around that, right?
Right.
Negative thoughts lead to more negative thoughts, spiral that way. Positive
Absolutely.
thoughts spiral more positive thoughts in that way, and we can start to become aware of that. And that's just a great tool. So I hope that our viewers really paid attention to what you just said in those ask formations, posing it in a question that your mind has to answer in a positive fashion and search for something positive.
And that also helps in your relationships with other people as well, because what usually happens is if you've got a problem in a given situation, the first thing we want to do is we want to call up a friend and complain about that particular thing and get somebody that's on our side. And as you said, now we're building up that negative energy. You could try a whole different thing in your relationships with people too, and just call somebody and say, so what great thing happened in your day today? Tell me something really cool that happened today. Like not the how was your day, oh, it was terrible, and you kind of roll with that. Start with, what really cool thing happened in your day today? And it's going to be a little bit of a struggle maybe in the beginning, but people start to get used to doing that because it feels good. It feels good talking about things that make us happy.
Well, it's definitely the kind of thing I do with my clients when I do this type of counseling and coaching work, and it really is something that takes a little work to do, but over time you're right, you kind of build that momentum. So let's change subjects to another topic that Margaret covers in the book. There's many I would love to talk about. I don't think we'll have enough time. You talk in one chapter about the nature of time, and time being not what we think it is. You also talk, and maybe you could touch a little on that, and touch a little bit about the higher self. So people have again, there might be misconceptions about what the higher self is. And if you could touch a little bit on free will and past lives.
The easy stuff.
Yeah, in a nutshell.
So let's start with the higher self, because that's one I think if we kind of understand that really helps. So what she said in that order of creation was that the Creator first created angels, and then angels created souls. So those souls is us, but it is us at our higher self, if you will. What she describes is that our souls, our higher self, is just enormous, and it's just an ever-expanding energy. And that everything that exists in the universe is part of the physicality of the energy that our higher selves puts into everything in order to be able to experience it. Because once we experience it, then we are able to allow it to grow. Once we kind of come into that experience, and how we normally do this is we come into some type of a physical container. In every physical container we come into, we start out very, very small, and that container grows, so that our energy grows along with it. And in cases like our human container, or even animals, which our souls are in. So the higher self places its energy in dogs and cats and horses and sky and water and sand and everything.
Yes.
So everything
All
that
equal.
exists, right.
Everything is a living, intelligent being, extension of that
Which
higher self.
really makes you have to think then when you realize that there might be a piece of yourself in that person that you hate, or that particular thing that you're not very happy about. And it also creates a much stronger attitude about the sacredness of every kind of life.
And there's no separation.
Right.
It's really oneness.
Exactly. So that becomes sort of the overview of who we are. Now, time, she says, is really a completely illusory thing that we've set up, but we've done it in order to have some kind of a framework to work in, because our brain needs something. Our brain needs something to be able to understand. So we see that there's a sun up, and we see that there's a sundown, and we see that we're growing older, so we've kind of put together this framework of time. We've put together calendars and different things. But to show the illusion of it, she points out a couple of different things as to how we already know that we can span time. One, for example, is I have a lot of clients that I will do readings or soul retrieval for who live in Australia. So technically, when I am speaking to them, although I'm talking on a cell phone, which has no wires whatsoever, no possible way of being connected to them, no logical sense of what's happening, except that cells of my voice are being sent to another part of the world, which happens to be in the future, because they're tomorrow as I'm talking to them. So they're in a completely different sunup, they're experiencing a whole different day, and yet we are talking in real time. So we're bridging that kind of time-space continuum. If you want to take it one step that's even more amazing, is you look at things through something like the Hubble telescope, and you'll see a star that's actually in the process of dying. That in order for that image to get to us, it's taken 1,000 to 2,000 years.
Right.
So we know we're looking at that image right this very moment, and it happened 2,000 years ago. So right there, we also see ways that time is so liquid. So that's what she said. We've kind of created time for our purposes, but there really is none. So our past
So we're going to
selves-
still, of course, we're going to still operate within that framework that we've designed and created, and it's an agreement that we have. You're right, to have structure in our physical experience, but technically, at least to also have the awareness that it is only relatively true in that way.
Exactly. But from our higher self's point of view, our higher self is actually watching then and communicating with our incarnations of the past, of the present, of the future, all at one time.
Great.
And Margaret even explains what we perceive as aliens as really just our future selves, who have the ability to look in on us, who have the ability to try to see, is there something we could do that could help, that could change this process without necessarily, infusing our energy on it. And so it's good. I mean, I would do it. Wouldn't you go back in a time machine if you could and see yourself in another life? I would do it in a heartbeat.
That would be fun.
So it makes sense to think
I'm hoping we can do that on the other side as well, sort of have just like a life review.
Well, that's
and we'll have a remote control at least that we can go
that's
forward, backward.
That's the amazing part, because what she says is at that higher self level, we're always there. So we watch everything in real time, if you will, as it's happening. So we never, because we die doesn't mean that we're going away. We're just reconnecting with a piece of ourselves.
So we're talking a lot about Margaret's messages and Margaret's words, which you know so well and are so passionate about and so needed. Could we invite Margaret in just for a couple of, just a minute or so, for a short message for anybody who's tuned in and watching this now must be meant to hear this message. So would you be able to do that for us?
Just give me a moment to take a sip of water and just kind of center into do
Gerry's taking a moment.
Hello, dear one, and welcome. It is so good to have this opportunity to speak with you, and I thank you so much for this chance to be here. So, you asked me for a message that I would be able to offer to the group who would be listening today. And I think the one thing that is so exciting for us to talk about is, Gerry kind of touched on it a little bit before, and you asked that wonderful question about why now, why people were believing in angels, why they were understanding. And Gerry touched a little bit on the whole Facebook phenomenon and other types of things. But there's a deeper message that comes in, and it's even the word that everyone uses about this information, which is sharing. And what's so important, and I am so excited to see from our point of view, you're right, there's nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong in any aspect of anything that happens, because whatever you do, whatever situation that happens, it is simply an experience for you to grow from. And sometimes the more difficult the experience, the more you grow as a soul. But what's happening in this whole phenomenon is that people are sharing their experiences. And it happens in so many ways. So there are some people who are sharing their frustrations and sharing their anger, and yes, someone may jump on and share that anger with them, but you'll also watch that someone will come on and say, it's okay, you're a great person, this is going to end. Something starts to change that energy. Or people will share inspirational messages. And not just people who are writers or people who are involved in this field, but just people you know will find something that inspires them and they feel like sharing it. And the thing that I just would urge everyone to keep doing is to keep doing that. Right now on the radio show, we are involved in something, and I know the timing will not be the same when people watch this, but it's called the 44 Days of Kindness. And the thought behind it is that for 44 days, up until the August 22nd be an Angel Day, we're asking people to every day perform a conscious act of kindness, not just a random, but to think before you go to bed at night, one of your last thoughts being, what could I do tomorrow that would be an act of kindness that would hopefully change someone's life? So it could be for a friend or a spouse or a family member. But that thought would allow you to sleep then on the concept of kindness, to sleep on the concept of love. And that not only will start to change the unconscious mind, but the more people do this, that simple act of thinking about something kind that you could do the next day will change you. It will start to change your energy.
That's a beautiful message.
I'm glad you think so.
Thank you. So we should keep sharing, just like we're doing now.
Keep sharing and share as much positivity as you possibly can. Share things that bring you joy, that can also bring other people joy. So if that sharing is funny pictures of kittens, or that sharing is a picture of, I personally am a huge fan of what they call Throwback Thursday, I believe, since it's always fun memories of your youth, and that's where we associate joy. So
thank you very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
We'll bring Gerry back. And interesting, thinking of sharing, we want to share Gerry's website so people can reach you.
That would be
But
great.
it's really interesting to hear an angel talk about social media. I mean, it just seems like
it's an amazing thing, because Margaret, when she speaks about angels, she talks about the different angels have certain specialties, and one of her areas of why we're working on this is this whole area of communication. So her awareness of everything that's going on, and even her desire to act upon it, her desire to share messages through Twitter or to Facebook or to ways that are, part of something that's there, is amazing.
So thank you, Gerry,
You're
very
welcome.
much.
Thank you.
So I hope that you will reach out to Gerry Gavin at gerrygavin.com. Of course, you can find him on social media. You can find me as well. I would love to hear from you. Let me know, what did you think about today's show? What are your experiences with angels, and what more would you like to know? So again, I want to thank Gerry Gavin for joining us and sharing Margaret's wisdom.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for joining us, and I hope that you will be back again next time on Positive Energy.